Welcome to the very first ever browser conference. This was a dream that I've had for many years, mostly because I've seen other types of conferences where people get together and talk about testing. They talk about a language, they talk about a framework, and just the amount of ideas, the cross pollination of topics. All of that stuff is so important for communities and ecosystems, and it's something I see in browsers especially. We get siloed into languages, we get siloed into frameworks, Playwright, Puppeteer, Selenium, WebDriver, Cheerio, all these things. And it's like, well, no, this all builds up into a bigger picture of what can I do with this technology. So obviously, we're going to dive into a lot of those dimensions today, but the genesis for this was really, let's all get together, let's talk about stuff, let's share things that we're working on. What's the future look like? What was the past like? Why are things the way they are? So yeah, that's the idea behind this conference is, let's get this together. Every year we want to do it. We want to get bigger every year. We want to do one in real life as well, have, booths, all that stuff. So yeah, that's the idea. I appreciate everybody coming and, joining. Please use the tools here, ask questions in QA. I will try to get to as many questions as I can. Obviously not going to have time for everything, but, generally we're around. So yeah, that said, also big thanks to our sponsors. Oxy Labs was huge for this. They helped us, with talks, obviously, funding the event, all that. Big thanks to them. We use them internally at Browserless, so big fans of Oxy Labs. Obviously, Browserless itself was the, person or the company that started all this. So thanks, to both these businesses for, providing funds and helping us out. And then last but not least, I want to point out two people that were absolutely instrumental in getting. Matt is the guy that put this all together. He's the guy on the left with the jacket, and he found talks, organized it, found the technology, did all the brought all the pieces together. So thank you so much, Matt, for sticking with it. And then Alejandro, as I mentioned, is like our backstage guy. He'll be helping out moderating, doing QA stuff. So neither of us have really done this a lot. So big thanks to Matt and Alejandro. Really appreciate you guys sacrificing your time and effort into this. So yeah, and then last but not least, I'm Joel. I run Browserless.io. Prior to Browserless, I worked at Elastic. I worked at AT&T. I worked in Wyden and Kennedy. It's a creative ad agency in Portland. They do Nike, Facebook, big stuff. So seen a lot of stuff, done a lot of stuff. A lot of it was good. A lot of it was bad, to be honest. So, but the big thing that happened was in 2017, I wrote a thing called Nevalia. Nevalia was a way to like automate headless Chrome because I wanted to use it for other purposes besides just testing. And so, yeah, that's me. I'm obviously here as well, just in case you get confused. I still have the black shirt on, so hope that all works out for you. Anyways, let me get started on this. So, yeah, Browserless sees a lot of things. We see a lot of use cases. We don't really focus on one dimension of using a headless browser. We're more just agnostic to the whole process. It's like, here's the tools you typically will need, and we take care of the hosting and the scaling part. And we see everything. You can gambling, data aggregation, all sorts of stuff. Testing, of course, too. And so we see a lot of stuff. And the technology is really interesting out there that facilitates all of this. But we think things could and should be better, to a degree. We're limited to some set of the tools that we have and the technologies we have. And, because of our perspective of what's going on and, where we think things are going, we have this opportunity now to kind of paint this picture of like a what if. So for those of you who are familiar with the Marvel franchise, it's, going back in time and like, what if we didn't do things this way? What if we tweaked this thing, or what if we thought about things in a different way? And so that's kind of the focus of this keynote. And, there's a lot of technical stuff in there. I hope everybody's ready to see a little bit of code and talk a little bit about stuff to a technical degree. I try to keep it as high level as possible just because everybody here has different languages and backgrounds. So apologies if you didn't see what you wanted to see, but this is kind of like a high level, what if things were different? So I have 3 topics I want to cover. They're very interesting. They're novel. I hope you enjoy them. I hope you have questions at the end because I can talk to depth about any of them because I was a part of them. So yeah, let's get going with the first one. And so the first one is this idea of hybrid automation. So obviously with WebDriver, Selenium, Puppeteer, Playwright, all these technologies, we want to automate some process that we're doing manually, whether it be testing, data aggregation, joining a game, online game and recording or recording meetings, all that stuff. Those are all great to automate. And we see this a lot at browserless. So the 90% of the time, it works really well. You can think of like self-driving cars, right? Like it works most of the time if you're just on a freeway and you have to stay in the lines and not hit the car in front of you. But, there's a lot of the time, 10%, 5%, whatever it is, where it's not easy. You need to have some kind of manual process involved to, handle things. Think about logging and think about multi-factor authentication, those kind of things. So we started to think about these kind of workflows and call it like a hybrid automation. So, what does that mean? Um, you know, there's just challenges in general to, even the 90%, writing fail-proof, fault-tolerant, robust code is difficult. And then, for a lot of the things, I'm going to focus on authentication as a big one. Managing those is really difficult too, because you have to think about security compliances. You have to think about cryptography. How are you storing these things? Are they in a database that's publicly accessible? So, having this information is really tricky, and handling that information is even trickier. And, more laws are coming about, SOC 2, all these, certifications, GDPR, and there's more coming depending upon where you're at. There's more, and it's more difficult. So to that end, we really think of data, or at least I personally think of data as like a liability. Like the more you have of it, it's not necessarily a good thing. It's an asset for sure for some things, but it's a liability at the end of the day. You got something that somebody is trusting you with, and if that gets broken or if you break trust, then bad things are probably going to happen. So what does that look like? So here's a screen probably a lot of you have seen. Maybe you're applying for a loan. You need to do some sort of like automated, payroll lookup or something, and you get presented with this. So you're working with a third party and they ask you for some information. Well, I don't really like this. I don't like giving people my information if I don't have to. And even more so, I really hate this. Like, why do you need to have my password? Why? I understand you need information and we're trying to give it to you in an effective way, but me giving you credentials and letting you run with them, it's not my idea of a great experience long term. So, um, yeah. So obviously, we kind of went about this. It's a liability, but it also violates a lot of banking agreements. So this is something that we see from time to time with banks, is that if you do these kind of things, you're actually in violation of your terms of service with your bank potentially. This works pretty well until you get to the multi-factor authentication part, which is really hard. So the next screen on, this guy is, and give me your two-factor authentication token, or, text message or whatever. And that's potentially worse than giving them your password to a certain extent. So, so this doesn't work for every use case. Multi-factor authentication makes it hard. And, there's just entire industries built on this. So the fact that it's here, I don't think it's really going to go away. But what if we could make it better? What if it was a little different? Um, you know, this is my kid's favorite slide on this whole talk, was, this honeypot. So, yeah, this is exactly what a hacker thinks when they see your information sitting in a database. And if it's public, I hope it's not. This is what's going to happen. Winnie the Pooh is going to eat you up. So, yeah, what if the future could be a hybrid automation? What if we only concerned ourselves with automating the parts we care about and left it to a user? So we don't actually collect information in this workflow, or in this sense. We essentially give the users a live stream of an experience and let them log in, use multi-factor authentication. And then once things are set up, we let automation kick off once we know they're past the login hurdle. So I'm going to really quickly show you some code and walk through it pretty quickly, just for the sake of time. But essentially, here's a bit of code. So, Puppeteer connects. We make a new page. I'm going to go to Gmail. And I actually did this myself just to kind of prove a point. And on the next slide, you'll see what that looks like. But I'm going to generate what's called a live URL. There's a lot of voodoo goes on behind the scenes. Essentially, it's just Puppeteer's screencast API under the hood. And then we mirror back, key events, mouse events, that sort of a thing. And so, this is all running in a headless browser. Nothing is interacting with it except for the user that's getting a live version of it streamed back and forth. So in this case, we don't see usernames, we don't see passwords. We just give them a login portal. They can do all their login, all that stuff. Once we are done, there's an event that fires. This could be anything, though. To be honest, you could wait for a navigation event. You could wait for a network event. You could wait for a button to be visible, a list, a table, whatever. So waiting for, the login part to be done is good. And then, obviously this is just kind of an example, but, once you're past the login, do what you need to do. Grab bank, transactions, whatever it is you need to get. But, to the end user experience, this is kind of what it looks like. So I'm going to let this run for a few seconds to kind of fully grok what's going on. On the left side, this is what a user sees. And so they get this, painted in the window of their browser, and it looks just like a regular web browser. It looks like they're just authenticating like they would locally. But if we, peel back the layers here and look at the markup that's going on, you can see it's just a big canvas element. So here I'm going through the portal, typed in my password, and of course for me, I have second factor auth. So now Google's saying, hey, finish your authentication, open this app and accept it. Really hard to do this on any other provider where you need to send them information like an auth code or something like that. But with, this hybrid automation workflow that we're kind of coining, this becomes a thing of the past. They can do whatever they want. They can use, their phones, they can get an auth code via SMS, that sort of a thing. And yeah, it's very simple, looks just like they would naturally look, and they don't have to give you information that you don't want to keep. So kind of a big deal there. And it's a big mind blow, to be honest. This is the first time, we're kind of treating user credentials almost like kind of how you would think Stripe and other, credit card processors do it. Like they do it client side, and you actually never get to see credit card information. It's a big mind blow, to be honest. If we can get more people to use tooling like this and, treat users more sensitively, I think, things like data leakages and vulnerabilities start to kind of go away a little bit. So, yeah. Again, just to kind of recap quickly, we didn't capture any sensitive information. Nowhere in our code did we save username and passwords. We just gave clients a way to log in. Our script is still attached to that session and will run after it's done. They can use whatever tools they want. Refactor or reCAPTCHA, all that stuff you can just handle. They can handle themselves. So it does solve actually some bot problems as well. And then if you really need to come back again, just save them cookies. Put the cookies in a database and, reload a page with the cookies applied, or reconnect later. There's a million ways you can handle that. But the important thing here is we're not saving sensitive info, and, people can have a good time. A few other cool things you could do with this: whitelist stuff. So Puppeteer is connected. You could hide buttons. You could hide navigation links. You could remove headers. You could focus on stuff or outline things. You could have a little WYSIWYG to like get things in and edited properly. It's really up to you. Wizards, all that stuff. You could augment the experience by a huge, stroke, banners, whatever. So it makes things a lot more seamless for them and a lot more easier for them to manage versus like crude pop-ups that just ask for, kind of sensitive information. So yeah, that's the first one I want to talk about. And the next one is debugging, everybody's other favorite thing to solve. So yeah, the story is most of these libraries say, like set headless to false, and that's good. You can see what's going on. You have access to some stuff to see what's happening. You can turn on DevTools for some libraries. It'll just pop up in the DevTools drawer. You can see what the elements, network calls, all that stuff, and see where things are going. But the problem is you'll inevitably end up with a lot of console logs everywhere, which we've done better than this. There's cruise ships out there that are much better debugging tools versus solo developers and their console log surfboards. So anyways, what does that mean? So we have some primitives that these libraries come with. What if we could dig a little deeper and grab something better? Well, I'm here to tell you that there is something better. Assuming that you have started Chrome and you started on this port, Chrome has this little handy JSON API. It gives you some metadata about the pages that are open. Puppeteer, Playwright, all the libraries use the same fundamentals. It may not be this exact JSON API, but they use the same thing in different technologies. And you can look through these. There's IDs that kind of give you the title of the page, where it's at currently. Fun thing, they give you the WebSocket debugger URL. So if you're, sophisticated enough, you could connect to that page with another piece of code and connect and do it. But the one I really want to highlight is this DevTools front end URL. And what that does is if you can load, this host and port, capture this DevTools front end URL, you get this great remote debugging experience built into the browser, and this literally costs you nothing to do. So you get a kind of a portal of what's going on in the browser, very similar to our hybrid automation URL video. So it's a live stream of the browser. You get DevTools connected to that headless browser, so you could watch things as they go on. Your Puppeteer code could go on just fine. It can automate. You could turn on slow-mo if you want, and you could just see what's going on. So it really facilitates watching things happen in production, seeing network calls, all that stuff. This is a much better like experience than trying to capture all these logs, network and otherwise, to see what's going on. So I mean, it is really insane. Chrome's built-in debugger is remote, works the same as the one that you have right now in your browser. It's just you need to know about it. That's the biggest thing. Similar to our hybrid automation workflow, clicking and typing, all that stuff just kind of flows through back to the source browser. Breakpoints, though, do work. So you can breakpoint, you can break on conditions, all the same stuff, debugging in production. We have a wrapper around that kind of helps a little bit with this, and it's just available at chrome.browserless.io. You can type in some TypeScript Puppeteer code and watch it do its thing. It's pretty fascinating, to be honest, and it works really well. I use it daily just because it's so helpful to debug, support code, that sort of thing. I think the rest of the team uses it probably daily, if not more than once a day. But just be careful. You could get into a spot like me when I was preparing for this talk where I remote debugged the debugger and I got infinite debugging pains. So watch out for the yo dog that's sleeping away there. And yeah, you could have a good time. Luckily, this worked, though, to be honest, which was quite shocking. I was not expecting this to be as effective as it was. So yeah. All right, last topic, and then I'll hopefully get to some questions, and we'll introduce the next speaker as I will be emceeing through the rest of this conference. What if we could multi-tenant Chrome? So a lot of the issues today we see are just resource utilization problems, which are easy if you've got billions of dollars and unlimited amount of computers. And, to be honest, Chrome wasn't really meant for, running multi-processes. Like I'm sure some of you have seen this where it's, there's Chrome by itself, just sucking away CPU time, and I guess not memory so much on this use case, but CPU for sure. And it's just, this is one process. What happens if you got 10 of these and they're all bottlenecked? Everything just slows down and times out. But to be honest, Chrome wasn't really ever built for server usage. I mean, to a certain extent, I'm sure Google uses it under the hood for search and whatnot, but it loves RAM, CPUs, and GPUs. It'll take all of it if it can. If you let it go, it'll run. Each, Chrome process spawns its own children process. So it's a lot like Nginx. Nginx, same thing. It has a top level process and it spawns children. So like, why would you run multiple top level Nginx processes if you couldn't? I don't know why you would, but people do it all the time. And to be honest, we do it at Browserless too, because it's just a simple way to like isolate, sessions to one browser process. But maybe not. Maybe you could do more with that. Let's think about that a little bit. Chrome has a WebSocket server, and Puppeteer, other libraries send it messages. So what if we could just like man in the middle those messages and see what they're doing? And maybe we could build like a firewall of sorts to isolate Chrome clients from the browser and other clients. And like the simplest example is, when Chrome gets started, Puppeteer, when Puppeteer gets started, it's, going through this message of connecting, hey, I want to see all the pages. And the browser says, okay, here you go. Here's all the pages. And they're effectively just saying, hey, select star from everybody and give that back to the client. Databases, this would stand out to probably all of us, like, hey, that's not a good idea. Maybe we should filter it to what they could see. Are they even an admin, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah. So to illustrate this further, this is literally how it goes. Puppeteer now would talk to Browserless or some other, server, your own. And we essentially wrap the Chrome process in its own like management layer. So Puppeteer says, hey, give me your pages. Browser says, hey, Chrome, give them their pages. Chrome, barfs back, here's all 4 pages I got open. Now we have this layer in between where it's like, oh, wait a minute, this client didn't open those pages. They shouldn't see all 4. They've only got 1 active right now. I'm only going to give them the 1 page they should be able to see. Boom, here's your 1 page back. What this does is it lets you isolate Puppeteer clients, Playwright clients, Selenium clients to only the pages that they themselves open and run. Now, some libraries do a better job of this than others to like isolate, different processes, or sorry, to operate different clients being connected to the same browser instance. You could do this a lot easier today with Playwright than you can with Puppeteer, but it's the same concept under the hood. Is like there's a layer here that's managing those connections. There's a layer here that's making sure that these clients aren't getting more than what they asked for. And so there's a whole bunch of stuff we could do with this. We could force good practices like incognito. So if you've got 3 clients connected to a browser process, they're all in incognito, so they can't see each other's cookies, they can't see each other's caches, and it just lets you isolate down to just the process itself, and making that more efficient. You can also optionally reallow those clients to use that same cache across different clients. And so, if you wanted to have multiple people, access to a cache, you could do that and just remove cookies. It really gives you the full power of what how to handle that and be sophisticated about that. Um, the other thing that this starts to do is offer a way to like remove management code away from like application code. And that's a pretty big nuance, I think, with headless browsers. Is there's not really strong recommendations on like, oh, this is, you know, management code. We need, performance and CPU and memory management and all that stuff. And like, we shouldn't let people connect when it's at high usage, blah, blah, blah. That was actually kind of one of the big genesises for browserless, was like, Chrome's just going to do it. And there's nothing stopping you if you want to, shoot yourself in the foot. The last point I want to make about this is we, implemented this internally at the CDP level. So CDP is Chrome DevTools protocol, and that is the lowest layer you can get aside from like building Chrome yourself. So this means that we can like brute force anybody, any client, any library into it, and nobody can kind of get around it because we filter and isolate from that perspective. So yeah, and so kind of diving a little deeper on this, why do this? I mean, it keeps code singular focus. So you could have code that solely does management. You could have code that just does application work, like logging in and getting links or whatever your use case is. They're two very different things. They're handled very differently. And to sort of like try to bundle it all together, it just means you're going to have, thousands of lines of code. The other sort of nice side effect of having this is that you don't have to worry about pools or clusters. It's just like one Chrome process per one machine, and multiple clients connected can really get all the utilization they can out of that one process. What this means is, you can get almost twice the throughput with less resources from what we've seen. Caching and other like assets mean future sessions are faster. So I use CNN as kind of a example for this, but CNN usually times out when I try to load it, with Puppeteer. But once it goes through the process first of getting all that cache hydrated, and the next times it's, seconds, like 2 seconds. But this isn't really easy. There's a lot of messages in the Chrome DevTools protocol, and you got to go through each one of them to make sure that there is no slippages. And so like our internal like firewall for this is several thousand lines of code to make sure that we're not bleeding clients through. And so it is tough, but it honestly, if you need to squeeze every performance thing out of Chrome, it's the way to go. So anyways, I'm very close to end of time. I want to grab some questions from people, but this is the, quick recap part of my foul up there. Yeah. So I really think hybrid sessions are the future for authentication in Chrome, and any sort of headless workflow where you need sensitive information, whether that be credit cards, username, passwords, health stuff, social security stuff. It just puts you outside of having to deal with that yourself and all the various forms of compliances you have to comply with. Yeah, number 2 is like use Chrome's debugger. It was built there. This really isn't a what if. It's like, why aren't you? it's there already. Just use it. It takes a little bit of wiring up, but it honestly isn't too hard. And you can even go about versioning it, because all those DevTools files are versioned, and Chrome hosts or Google hosts all those files as well if you want to like third party load them. And then like multiplexing in Chrome is really an insane speed and resource boost. So those are the big kind of points I wanted to make for this talk, and just kind of like kick things off a little bit and see what you guys think about that. So want to say, thanks again one more time for coming, for joining the session. Hope everybody gets something out of this and it's useful. I'm going to stop my screen share and see if I got any questions to dive into here. Got 2 minutes, so All right, y'all. You got some questions. What are the big changes for browserless 2? More browsers and more efficient? Yes, is the short answer there. Yeah, like we rewrote the entire framework for loading routes. It's all TypeScript based, and yeah, we can get the dev tools loaded faster. All these other things are a lot faster. We also have open types generated from it as well, and so you can get like open open API docs for free, and we use those internally as well as generate stuff from it. Good question about recordings. Yes, we are recording this event. We will definitely get that all figured out and sent out. So be on the lookout for that. I'm not sure when that'll happen, but not planning on doing a ton of post production, to be honest. So hopefully it'll go out very quickly. Love seeing the hello from France, India. Thanks y'all for staying up late. Appreciate it. Okay, sweet. Okay, let me jump into one more before I run out of time. Will there be a product roadmap for open source side? Yes, very much want to get this in place. I know it's been kind of a mess for browserless just because it's every use case means a lot of stuff, and we're always working on different things at the side on parallel. Yeah, so definitely. All right, I lied. I'm going to grab one more. What is the Web3 aspect of this? That is up to you, to be honest. The Web3 stuff is great. I want to like incorporate that as much. It really depends on what the browsers decide to do. And I know there's like all these offshoots and different browsers, out there that are doing different things. So it's really up to them what they decide to do, and we will support whatever we can in that, and hopefully, make it a good experience. So, anyways, thanks everybody. Enjoy the conference. Please do talk, lounge, QA, comments, all that. Yeah, hope to see you soon. I'm going to jump over to the next talk and introduce our speaker. So I will see you there.